Most people will work for 40 years and stop working with almost nothing saved. Not because they don't work hard, not because they have bad luck, but because they spent 40 years thinking like workers, even though they really wanted the life of a business owner. I'm going to tell you something that sounds mean, but will save you 40 years of having just enough money to get by. The worker mindset is a mental trap that looks like safety, and if you don't learn to think differently, you'll find out at age 65 that having a job and having money saved are completely different things. Here's what I mean by thinking like a worker. You trade your time for money. You wait for someone to tell you it's okay to act. You let someone else decide what you're worth. You choose safety instead of learning. You're happy about your paycheck, but never ask questions about the system. Let me tell you the hard truth that no school counselor will tell you. Having a job is a great way to make money, but a terrible way to build wealth. A job is designed to pay you fairly for your time. It is not designed to make you rich. The reasons are perfectly clear once you understand them. Your boss pays you enough to keep you from quitting, but not enough to become free from needing money. That's not mean, it's just math. If they paid you what you're really worth to the company, they couldn't make money themselves. Show me what someone gets rewarded for, and I'll show you what happens. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You can have a job and still think like an owner. You can get a salary and still build wealth. But you cannot do it by thinking like a worker. The change isn't about quitting your job tomorrow. It's about understanding the difference between renting out your time and owning something that grows bigger over time. Let me explain the mental habits that lock people into worker thinking. First is reward-based thinking. When you're paid by the hour or get a salary, you, without knowing it, start trying to spend time, not create value. You start measuring your worth in hours instead of results. Second is following authority. You listen to your boss, to company rules, to the organization chart. You stop thinking for yourself because someone else is paid to do the thinking. But here's the problem. Your boss isn't thinking about making you wealthy. They're thinking about getting value from your time. Third is copying what others do. Everyone around you is moving up the company ladder, so you do too. Everyone's celebrating their yearly raise, so you celebrate yours. But the crowd isn't moving toward money freedom. It's moving toward comfortable dependence. Now, let me show you what happens when you flip the problem. Instead of asking, how do I get promoted? Ask, what makes sure I stay poor forever? The answer is clear. Trading time for money with no ownership, no company shares, no growing assets. If you want to avoid being foolish, stop doing that. Warren Buffett worked for Benjamin Graham at Graham Newman. He got a salary. But here's what made him different. He thought like an owner while he was employed. He studied businesses all the time. He saved lots of money. He treated every dollar like it mattered because he understood compound interest. I practiced law for years. I had clients. I recorded hours. But I never thought like a lawyer building a practice. I thought like a business person managing resources. I kept 20% of my brain power for studying businesses, understanding money systems, and making investment choices. That 20% made me wealthy. The 80% paid my bills. The difference is knowing what you're good at. Your job title doesn't define what you're good at. Your deep knowledge does. You can work as an accountant and be good at understanding real estate money. You can work in marketing and understand software business plans. Being good at something is what you know deeply enough to make smart choices. Here's the thinking tool. Separate where your money comes from and how you build wealth. Your job gives you cash coming in. That's valuable. But wealth comes from owning things that grow. Businesses, real estate, ideas you own, skills that create business value. Don't mix up the two. Let me tell you about Andrew Carnegie. He started as a telegraph operator making $2.50 each week. He could have thought like a worker forever. Instead, he studied how businesses worked. He learned about railroads, steel, and managing money. He saved money and bought small ownership pieces. he thought like an owner while working for someone else. Benjamin Franklin was a printer, but he didn't just print. He owned printing businesses. He didn't just write. He owned the magazines. He understood that the wealth wasn't in doing the work. It was in owning the system that created value. That's not worker thinking. That's owner thinking. Now, here's the math that changes everything. Worker thinking is straight line. You trade hours for dollars. There's a limit. You can only work so many hours. You can only charge so much per hour. The formula has a top limit. Owner thinking grows faster and faster. You build something once and it grows. You learn a skill that increases your value forever. You get something that makes money while you sleep. You create power. The formula has no top limit. Let me be specific. If you think like a worker, you try to get the next raise. If you think like an owner, you try to build something that increases in value over many years. The worker celebrates a 5% salary increase. The owner grows money at 15% each year on increasing amounts. Here's where most people fail. They wait until they have money to start thinking like an owner. That's backwards. You think like an owner first, then the money comes. You study businesses before you can afford to buy them. You understand real estate money before you own property. You learn the thinking tools first. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the hardest workers, but they are learning machines. They spend each day trying to be a little smarter than they were when they woke up. That's owner thinking. That's how you build real wealth. Let me give you the missed chance framework. Every year you spend thinking like a worker is a year of growth you'll never get back. Time is the rarest resource you have. You can earn more money. You cannot earn more time. If you're 30 years old and you start thinking like an owner, you have 35 years of growing money before normal retirement. If you wait until you're 50, you have 15 years. The difference isn't straight line. It grows faster and faster. The early years matter most because they grow for the longest time. Now, here's the flip test I want you to use on your own life. What would make sure you stay needing money forever? First answer, never own anything. Second, never learn skills beyond your job duties. Third, never study how wealth is actually built. Fourth, follow the crowd and want people to approve of you. If you want to avoid being foolish, do the opposite. Own something, even if it's small. Learn skills that create business value, not just finish tasks. Study businesses, money systems, how people think, and math. Think for yourself about what actually creates wealth. But here's what most people miss. You don't have to quit your job to start thinking like an owner. In fact, a job is often the best place to learn owner thinking. You have steady money coming in. You can take risks with your learning because you're not risking how you pay bills. You can study industries from the inside. When Warren and I looked at See's Candies, we didn't buy it because it was exciting. We bought it because the math made sense. It could raise prices. People were loyal to the brand. It made cash that we could use somewhere else. That's owner thinking, understanding the money side deeply enough to make smart choices. The worker looks at See's and sees a candy company. The owner looks at See's and sees a cash-making machine with a lasting competitive edge. Same business, completely different mental tool. That difference is worth millions of dollars over a lifetime. Let me tell you about a mental habit that destroys wealth. Fear of losing what you have. People are more afraid of losing what they have than excited about gaining something better. They hold on to job safety even when it's keeping them poor. They fear the risk of ownership even when the risk of staying employed is bigger. Here's the logical thinking. What's more risky? Building multiple income sources and owning things, or depending completely on one boss who can fire you tomorrow? The worker thinks the job is safe. The owner knows that depending on one source of money is the highest risk of all. Now, let me give you the practical framework for changing. First, while you're employed, study businesses like an owner. Read yearly reports. Understand business math. Learn how successful companies actually make money. This costs nothing but attention. Second, use money, even small amounts, with owner discipline. Every dollar you spend is a dollar you didn't invest. Every dollar you invest is a dollar that can grow for many years. The habit of thinking like a money manager matters more than the amount. Third, build skills that create business value, not just task value. Task value is, I can process these forms well. Business value is, I understand how to improve this entire system. One keeps you employed. The other makes you valuable to any business, including your own. Fourth, study the thinking tools from many subjects. How people think explains why people make bad decisions. Money systems explain rewards and choices. Math explains growing money and chances. Biology explains complex changing systems. You need all of them. Here's what I learned over many years. You don't have to be brilliant to build wealth. You just have to be consistently not foolish. Avoid the big mistakes. Don't trade time for money forever. Don't spend everything you earn. Don't follow the crowd into having just enough money. Don't confuse being busy with making progress. The big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting. Worker thinking is impatient. You want the raise now. You want the promotion next year. You want rewards right away. Owner thinking is patient. You build something and let it grow for many years. I did not succeed in life by being smart. I succeeded because I have a long attention span. I could focus on the same problems, the same ideas, the same thinking tools for many years, while everyone else chased the next shiny thing. That's the advantage of owner thinking. Let me tell you something about Berkshire Hathaway. Warren and I didn't build it by being the smartest guys in the room. We built it by consistently using smart ideas over 50 years. We avoided being foolish. We understood what we were good at. We let compound interest work. That's it. Most people never build wealth because they never think past next month. They try to get the next paycheck, the next vacation, the next car payment. They never ask, where will I be in 30 years if I keep thinking this way? That question changes everything. Here's the test. Look at people 20 years ahead of you on your current path. If they're free from needing money and happy, keep going. If they're still dependent on a paycheck and worried about money, change direction now. The path tells you everything you need to know. Now, let me talk about the fear that's probably in your mind. But I need my job. I have bills. I have responsibilities. I can't just become an owner overnight. You're right, and you're missing the point. Nobody's telling you to quit tomorrow. Nobody's telling you to take crazy risks. I'm telling you to change how you think while you keep earning. Study businesses while you get your salary. Build skills while you're employed. Use money, even small amounts, with discipline. The change happens in your mind first. You stop seeing yourself as someone who trades time for money. You start seeing yourself as someone who builds growing value. The outside changes follow naturally from that inside change. Here's what's remarkable about this mental change. It costs nothing. You don't need permission. You don't need money to start. You don't need certificates. You just need to start thinking differently about the relationship between time, value, and wealth. Let me give you a real example. Two people work the same job, same salary, same hours. One thinks like a worker, spends the paycheck, waits for raises, hopes for promotions, stops working dependent on government help. The other thinks like an owner, saves a lot, studies businesses, gets assets, builds skills beyond the job description. Same starting point, same income, completely different result 30 years later. The difference isn't luck or being smart. It's mindset. It's thinking tools. It's understanding how wealth is actually built. Here's the idea from studying how people think. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Worker thinking gets rewarded with okay comfort and complete dependence. Owner thinking gets rewarded with growing wealth and freedom. The market is telling you something if you'll listen. Now, let me give you the money reality that nobody wants to admit. The gap between workers and owners isn't getting smaller, it's getting bigger. Technology, robots, and worldwide business reward ownership and size. If you're still thinking like a worker in 20 years, you'll be competing with artificial intelligence and workers from all over the world. But if you think like an owner, you use those same forces to help you. You own the businesses that use technology. You invest in the companies that benefit from worldwide business. You build skills that can't be replaced easily. That's not being negative. That's logical thinking. Here's the thinking tool I want you to remember. Flipping. Always flip. Instead of asking, how do I get rich? Ask, what keeps people poor? Instead of looking for brilliance, avoid being foolish. Instead of chasing success, prevent failure. What keeps people poor? Trading time for money with no ownership, buying instead of investing, following the crowd, waiting for permission instead of understanding, not learning skills beyond their job description. That's your list for what not to do. Let me tell you about worldly wisdom. You need thinking tools from many subjects because the real world uses many subjects. Business problems aren't just business problems. They're people-thinking problems, math problems, systems problems. If you only think like a worker in your narrow job, you'll never see the full picture. The lawyer who only knows law is at a disadvantage to the lawyer who understands how people think, money systems, and numbers. The accountant who only knows accounting is at a disadvantage to the accountant who understands business plans and competition strategy. Thinking across many subjects grows your value. Here's what I tell young people. Be a learning machine. Read yearly reports. Study businesses. Learn math. Understand how people think. Read history. Every thinking tool you get makes you more valuable. Every subject you master gives you another tool. The best thing a human being can do is to help another human being know more. That's why I'm telling you this. I spent many years learning these ideas. You can learn them in hours, but you have to actually use them. Knowledge without using it is just entertainment. Now, let me talk about the real barrier. Most people would rather fail in a normal way than succeed in an unusual way. They'd rather follow the worker path and end up broke than think like an owner and face people not approving of them. That's copying others, destroying their wealth. Your coworkers won't understand why you're reading yearly reports instead of watching television. Your family won't understand why you're studying businesses instead of trying for promotions. Your friends won't understand why you're building ownership instead of buying expensive things. That social pressure is real. But here's the truth. In 30 years, they'll still be working. You won't be. In 30 years, they'll be worried about money. You won't be. In 30 years, they'll wish they'd thought differently. You already did. That's the reward for unusual thinking. Let me tell you about another thinking tool that separates owners from workers. The idea of having choices. Workers try to get one result, keeping their job. Owners try to get many results. This investment works, or that one does, or this skill opens 3 different doors. Having choices means you're never trapped. Here's how this plays out in real life. The worker learns one narrow thing because that's what the job needs. The owner learns broadly because having choices needs many paths to success. When one door closes, the owner has 5 others. When the worker's door closes, they're starting from 0. Think about what happened during money problems over the past 100 years. Workers with narrow skills in dying industries suffered. Owners with many thinking tools and multiple income sources adapted. The difference wasn't being smart. It was how they thought about building their position in the world. Now, let me give you a framework I call uneven opportunity spotting. Workers see opportunities through the lens of their job description. Owners see opportunities everywhere because they understand many subjects. You read the same newspaper, but you see different possibilities. That's the power of owner thinking. When I read about a new technology, I don't just think that's interesting. I think, what business plans does this make possible? What existing companies does this threaten? Where are the second effects? What will be valuable in 5 years that nobody sees today? That's not genius. It's trained pattern spotting. Here's the brutal money truth about the next 20 years. Artificial intelligence and robots will destroy millions of worker positions, not because technology is evil, but because technology makes worker thinking outdated. If your value is doing repeatable tasks, you're competing with machines that don't sleep. But here's the opportunity. Owner thinking becomes more valuable, not less. Machines can't use money wisely. Computer programs can't understand human thinking. AI can't build relationships or spot complex patterns across subjects. The skills that make you think like an owner are the skills that can't be done by robots. Let me be specific about what to study right now. First, understand the money side of different business plans. How do software companies make money differently than factories? What makes some businesses more valuable than others? This is pattern spotting that grows over time. Second, study how people think deeply. Why do people make illogical decisions? What are the predictable mistakes? How do rewards drive behavior? This knowledge is useful in every area: business, investing, relationships, personal choices. It's the ultimate many-subject tool. Third, understand the math of growing money and chances. Most people can't calculate expected value. They can't understand normal rates. They can't think in probabilities. If you can, you have an enormous advantage in every decision you make. This is how owners look at opportunities. Fourth, learn how wealth is actually built in different areas. Read life stories of people who built businesses. Study how fortunes were made and lost. Understand the common patterns. This isn't entertainment. It's research into what actually works. Here's what most people get wrong about learning. They study their field deeply and nothing else. They become the world's best worker in a narrow area. But the owner studies everything lightly first, then goes deep in areas with uneven opportunity. It's a completely different strategy. Let me give you an example from my own life. I studied law, but I also studied math, how people think, money systems, physics, biology, and history. That combination let me see patterns that pure lawyers missed. When everyone else was thinking about legal examples, I was thinking about rewards, chances, and business money. That many-subject approach didn't just make me a better lawyer, it made me a better investor, a better thinker, a better decision maker. The value wasn't just added, it was multiplied. Each subject I understood made every other subject more valuable. That's the framework of thinking tools. Here's another mental habit that traps people: consistency and commitment habit. Once you commit to being a worker, your brain wants to stay consistent with that identity. You reject information that disagrees with it. You make excuses for missing opportunities. You become trapped by your own need for consistency. The owner fights this habit on purpose. I'm employed today, but that's not my identity. My identity is money manager, business analyst, logical decision maker. The job is just a current arrangement. This mental flexibility is what allows you to see opportunities that others miss. Now, let me address something that confuses people: the difference between starting a business and owner thinking. You don't have to start a business to think like an owner. Starting a business is one path, but you can think like an owner while investing in stocks, in real estate, in your own skills, in anything that grows. The worker asks, how do I move up in this company? The owner asks, where can I use resources to create uneven returns? These are completely different questions. They lead to completely different lives, and you can ask the owner's question while getting a worker's paycheck. Here's the key understanding. Your salary is seed money for owner thinking. Every dollar you earn is a dollar you can use. The worker sees the salary as lifestyle fuel. The owner sees the salary as investment money. That difference in view is worth millions. Let me give you the final idea. It is remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not foolish instead of trying to be very smart. You don't need genius. You need discipline. You don't need perfect decisions. You need to avoid terrible ones. Stop trading time for money as your only plan. Stop waiting for permission to build wealth. Stop following the crowd into comfortable having just enough. Stop trying to get next month when you should be trying to get the next 30 years. Just stop doing foolish things. Start thinking about ownership, even small ownership. Start building skills that create business value. Start studying how wealth actually grows. Start using money with discipline. Start learning the thinking tools from many subjects. Just start doing logical things. Here's the reality. You're going to spend the next 30 years either way. You're going to work, make decisions, spend money, build skills. The question is, will you do it with worker thinking or owner thinking? That choice decides everything. The worker will work those 30 years and have almost nothing to show for it except a modest pension and fading memories of a career. The owner will work those same 30 years and have things that create income, skills that create value, and money freedom. Same time invested, same effort spent, completely different result. The difference is thinking tools. The difference is how you think about time, value, and wealth. The difference is whether you see yourself as someone who trades time or someone who builds growing value. Let me end with this. You cannot think like a worker and build wealth. You cannot trade time for money forever and achieve money freedom. You cannot follow the crowd and end up anywhere except where the crowd ends up. These are not opinions. They're mathematical certainties. But you can have a job and think like an owner. You can get a salary and use money like a business person. You can be employed today and money free tomorrow. The path exists. The question is whether you'll take it. In 30 years, you'll either own something that grows or you'll still be hoping for a raise. You'll either have things that create income or you'll be dependent on a boss. You'll either have built something valuable or you'll have traded your most productive years for okay comfort. The choice is made daily in how you think, not just what you do.